I'm working with our restorative justice section with cruel consequences. And pretty much, I just want you to tell me your story, what happened, and then where are you going now? Like, what are you doing now? How are you moving forward, or how's it still affecting you? And then, how do you feel about all the laws changing and like recreational cannabis and medical cannabis?
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, it was a lot. Take your
That
time.
sums it up a little bit. Well, Dolores Halbin, I was a registered nurse. I became a nurse kind of late in life. I graduated when I was 40 with all my kids in the audience. So it was a lot of work being an adult learner. And it was a second career for me. So worked really hard to be a nurse. I was a good nurse. I was an ICU nurse. I'd be real handy right now in COVID because I know how to work a
Yeah.
ventilator. But in 2014, in 2007, my husband and I he pissed off an IRS agent and managed to get us, we didn't make any money at all, 60,000 a year, audited for 5 consecutive years. So it's really stressful being audited, and he was diabetic and wasn't watching his meds, and he had a stroke um, in his left eye, which was his good eye. And he was partially blind in his right eye, but he had a blood vessel bleed in the back of his eye, and he developed what's called acute angle glaucoma. It's a very brutal form of glaucoma that's really not got a treatment. We went through, oh God, half a dozen surgeries on his eye over the next 2 years, and we were finally in the operating room. In the operating room at the Truman Medical Center, the Eye Foundation guys were going to remove his eye. I mean, it was blind, it was painful. They were just going to take it out and give him an artificial eye. And somebody comes into the operating room, like in the holding area, and told us that they'd lost the grant we were there on, and we were going to have to pay for it. They took his IV out and kicked us out.
No way.
God, yeah. So his eye was numb, so it wasn't hurting him any. And we go to my mom's, and it's not like we were unfamiliar with marijuana. We were from the 60s. Of course we knew about marijuana. Of course we used marijuana, but we had kids during the brown shirt era, during the DARE era. We had kids. We lived in the suburbs. You just couldn't smoke marijuana. You couldn't use marijuana. You just couldn't. You can drink, that's legal, but it got too creepy in the 80s, when the Reagan's war on drugs started and they started the 3 strikes. It was like, oh no, it's not worth it. So my mom explained how her uncle had used cannabis to treat his glaucoma,
Mhm.
and Jean should at least try that. And she laughed. She's so cute. She goes, that stuff's not still illegal, is it? And we're like, well, yes, Mom, it is. But we did. I knew about the cannabis program. I knew about the cannabis program, so I was uh, hopeful to. I didn't know that it had been closed. I didn't know anything about it. I just knew that the federal government did send people with glaucoma marijuana. It was so good for glaucoma that they started the NIDA program, where they sent anybody in the country with glaucoma this 10 of 300 pre-rolled cigarettes, cannabis joints a month from the marijuana farm in Mississippi. Then it got shut down during the Reagan years when we got really brutal and we privatized prisons, and there was no relief for my husband. So we started growing it in the basement because didn't want to send his nurse wife out on the black market. We lived in the middle of nowhere, but there was some divorce going on in the family, and we were on the, just by nature of being who we were, we weren't involved in it. We just got tangled up in it. And as is often the case with people that get busted, we were turned in by family. And once that happens, your life pretty much ends as you knew it. It's over. Your career is over. Your education is useless. you are unemployable. The stress of it, people do die from broken hearts. And I think ultimately that's what happened to my husband. When they raided us in 2014, it was not just, wasn't just smoking it. It was being almost blind, and having trouble getting around, but being able to be productive and go down and be in his garden. It's just got such a beautiful aura about it. The plant does. They even say that in research in Colorado with veterans with PTSD, that they start growing indoor gardens, that the veterans start experiencing relief when the plants get 12 inches tall. Before they're ever flowered, before you ever even know if they're boys or girls, they start making them feel better. It's just a really beautiful plant. And when he had to sit there and watch him walk out with it just broke him. The consequences of that were 4 days later at 9 o'clock in the morning, they arrested us. They came out and arrested us, took us to jail on $25,000 bond each,
Oh,
$50,000 bond altogether. We owned property. We'd lived there for 20 years. We built our house. I had a job there. He was legally blind, and $25,000 a piece bond to make sure we didn't run off from our marijuana charges. Bates County only has bond reduction hearings once a week on Wednesday afternoons. So by picking us up on a Thursday morning at 9 a.m., they guaranteed us a week in jail. 12 by 12 foot cell that already had one man in it. It had one bunk in it. They put him on the floor. My 60-year-old disabled husband spent a week on a jailhouse floor and came out and died for having 3 mature marijuana plants. Three mature flowering plants. He had his garden set up so he could harvest about 3 plants every 2 to 3 weeks. By the time he died, God, I had lost 40 pounds. I couldn't sleep. I mean, with the TIAs, he lost his brain. So the last 2 months of his life, even though I had hospice, they were only there part of the time. And I couldn't leave him. I couldn't leave him. I would get him to sleep, and I would run upstairs and I would catnap for maybe get an hour and a half sleep at a time for 2 months. So by the time you get to this point as a victim of prohibition, you're first of all, you're physically done. You have nothing left to fight with, and you're broke. You are flat ass broke. Whatever security we used to have, we no longer had. We had no financial security whatsoever. I owed my attorney. I owed friends that made my mortgage payment for me when I couldn't leave home. And now my husband's dead, So I had to sell our house. We built it ourselves off the land. I made a few phone calls, got in touch with a friend of mine that has a relative that owns a venue not too far, about an hour south of Kansas City, that's got 60 acres. And I've asked him if I could come there with my dogs and my cats and camp for a few weeks and figure out, what I'm going to do. So I expect by this time next week to be living in a tent. So how is prohibition? Well, it's just a gift that keeps giving. I have 3 college degrees and I am unemployable as my profession. Could probably get a job at Walmart if I agreed to go through drug treatment at my own expense and then agree to random drug screens, because after my husband died, I went on trial. He died on the 27th of November, Thanksgiving. My trial was the winter solstice, December 21st. I was found guilty on January 16th, and I was sentenced to time served in jail on the spring equinox, March 21st. Interesting dates. But even though I got convicted of a lesser charge, I didn't get convicted of cultivation. I did get convicted of misdemeanor possession less than 30 grams. It killed my nursing career. I could have gone the route of other nurses, completely walked away from cannabis, agreed to go through drug treatment at my own cost for about 3 grand, and agreed to sign on under a probationary thing at a hospital where I'm subjected to random drug screens. But at the age of 60, and after being a nurse for decades, and I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. I'm a part of the Can Convict Project. After Amendment 2 passed in Missouri, you heard this sucking sound as all the activists went into the industry, which was absolutely heartbreaking. I thought you get the will of the people out there and you get it, legalized to a degree.
Yeah.
Then you make laws and you get everyone out of prison. Then you make money. But we skipped the middle part. We skipped the part about making laws and getting people out of prison and went straight to making money. And we're all going to rot in hell for that. I mean, this plant has a heart and a soul. And to go on and make money at it while there are people serving life sentences for it is wrong. I won't spend a dime even if we had a legal dispensary. I will remain a criminal until everyone's out of jail. Because to me, there isn't any legal marijuana. Until the federal government takes it off the classification schedule, marijuana is illegal. I don't care what state you're in or where you are. One of our activists just got busted for having plants in her field. She had 22 plants, and the National Guard descended, and the Mustang Task Force attacked, and they surrounded her with guns, and they put a gun in her face because she had a few plants growing in with her vegetables. And until that can't happen anymore, marijuana is not legal. Our state gives $7 million a year in grant money to our drug task force. $7 million. We have 7,000 unopened rape kits in ours, no funding to open them. The same lab that busts people that takes their marijuana plants and tests them to make sure they're marijuana plants is the same lab that is responsible for testing rape kits, and they're claiming no funding for it. Most of us that go through things like this don't come out with any money. We just don't. This is what makes it so devastating to our culture. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a triangle like this, and your basic needs down here are food, clothing, and shelter. And when those are satisfied, then you can jump up a notch and you can start dealing with getting educated and developing social structures. And then, when that kind of stability is met, you can keep going up on what you can do. But once I was up here. I was well educated. I had a really good job, and I had administrative experience that was going to secure my future as an elderly person that I am now. And I lost all of that. I took the Candyland slide back to start. And when you are 60 years old and it has cost you every penny that you have in life, it has cost you everything you held dear that you have had to sell to eat and buy medicine. And you are left with nothing, no career, no home, and in my case, no spouse. We've gone through the whole Me Too movement. We've gone through the whole Black Lives Matter movement, and we still have not addressed mandatory minimums and prohibition. And which takes all the funding away from women to have rape investigations done. So it's all connected to this tweaked criminal justice system that we have embarked upon, rather than go after, rapists and bad guys. We have gone after a plant.
I really do appreciate you sharing everything with me. I know some topics could get sensitive, so I know I didn't want to push any boundaries. And you're still moving forward with what you want to do, just figuring out everything day by day.
Anyway, thank you so much. It's getting kind of hot out here. So if you've got everything,
Thank you so much again, and have a great day.
oh, you're welcome. I appreciate you taking the time. I really do.